Tēnā koutou katoa. Something a little bit different this week. As we head towards the end of the season of this podcast, I've got no guest today. I'm just sitting reflecting on the amazing conversations that we've had, all that we've been so privileged to witness over this season, some of the reoccurring themes and the things that I'm left thinking, or the things that have stuck with me and that I'm taking away. We've had so much wisdom, so many different experts. And some of the things that certainly the reoccurring themes, one of which is sitting with me, I guess, because it's prevalent for so many of you as well, I think. And that's this kind of transition phase, if you like. I've always looked at our life, and not just our life, but even our day on the micro level as seasonal. So some of us find we're better in the mornings than we are in the evenings. Some of us find we're better at the start of the week than we are at the end, or vice versa. And of course, we're constantly going through these transitions, whether it's to our day, our week, our year, and of course, our lives. And I think this is particularly true for women who seem so much more in touch because of our physiology, so much more in touch with our cycles, our rhythms, the seasons to our soul, if you like. And aging is something that keeps coming up, particularly midlife, this midlife transition. And I love how ancient cultures look at this. It was something that I remember when I was exposed first to Asian cultures, being amazed by that age was a good thing. Older you became, the more you had to give, the more you had to offer in terms of wisdom, and therefore the more respected you became in the community. And thought that made so much sense. And it's a subject I've always been passionate about. And yet when I first came across this in my early 20s, I was far too young to really write about it with any credibility. Of course, that has changed over the last couple of decades. I'm now not too young to write about midlife as I approach it myself. I love this concept of transitions are a normal part of being human, and that we should be celebrating those transitions. Now, I know, of course, that a lot of these transitions are more difficult for some than others. And of course, for women are made more difficult by the system we operate in and how this has been viewed for many, many years. But I reckon, and it's something that I've been thinking about myself as I've gained grey hairs around my ears, I like to call them flecks of wisdom. Because I feel like the things that we gain that we may not want, I mean, I could probably do without the random hairs that grow out of my chin, but the things that we gain that we may not want as we age, whether it's the stiff joints, the laughter lines, the flecks of wisdom. What if we looked at this as a celebration? Because some of the reoccurring themes that has come up in our conversations and the corridor we've had on this show around midlife has been that as women, particularly, often at this point in time, we are hitting the peak of our career. We are financially stable. Have brought up families. We have overcome so many obstacles in our life. We learn so much in the process, but we're almost at the pinnacle and the peak of everything we have to give. And so that's a cause for celebration, although, of course, our society makes that much more difficult than it should be, particularly our views on aging. What if, like in other cultures, we became more visible with age because of everything we brought to the table and had to offer, not less visible? And I love this concept. It's something, though, that links so much of the other stuff I see, particularly for women in this space, and for non-binary people, anybody that's from an underrepresented group, because we know that, particularly in the leadership space, this has been dominated by our male counterparts for generations. And so things are still different for women. And some of the conversations that come up a lot in the work that I do highlight this. But I think there's a tendency sometimes to think with this, well, we've been doing this for over 100 years. Surely the statistics are improving. Surely we've done the work in this space now. Things are equal for women. And yet I still often have conversations with people, particularly from male-dominated industries. So I was at a conference for surgeons. Of course, women were the minority in that audience, but would talk about being asked by patients if somebody else could operate on them, or even by nurses around them and other women asked, do you need help with that? Should I go and get Mark or Jeff to help you with that? And so there's this concept sometimes, particularly in male-dominated environments, that we are undermined or we are less credible because of how we present, because we don't present in the way that everybody thinks of something male-dominated, i.e. a doctor, a surgeon, etc. And this is true of things like the automotive industry, where if a woman comes out of the garage in their overalls, some customers will ask, even women, some customers will ask, oh, actually, I was hoping to see Mark. Can I speak to Mark? So women actually talking about having to have their certificate plastered on the window of the garage so that people knew they were credible and they had the right skills. Equally, there are women that talk about work social events. So there will be a certain time in the evening where far too many drinks have been consumed that the behavior changes, that they become more at risk than their male counterparts, or the conversations start to get potentially more inappropriate. Again, because of their gender, because of how they present. One female leader was talking to me the other day about Facebook requests, something that you get LinkedIn requests when you've been to a conference, but she will sometimes get personal Facebook requests from men at those events, but her male counterpart doesn't. And these are constantly reinforced examples of where sometimes things are different. And then we add to that the stuff we know well, that we are more likely to be asked to take notes at a meeting. We're the ones that are more likely to clear up the room afterwards before we leave, to get talked over in the meeting, or to have ideas taken by others. And so it is still different. And I think what this does is it puts enormous pressure on us to have to try and change ourselves to fit in, or to have to try and do things different to account for the fact the landscape we operate in is different. And this, of course, means we're carrying more mental load, we're having to do more work just to get to the same level and keep up the same, I guess, sanity, if you like, as everybody else around us. And of course, when you put further intersections over this, not just gender, that becomes even harder still. There's this concept that I firmly believe in, but we have to know ourselves first to be able to then back ourselves and have the confidence in what we bring to the table. And yet, sometimes when we know who we are and what makes us tick, and yet society is telling us we need to be more or better or different, there is this pressure then to have to change that. And for so many of us, particularly if we've been in male dominated industries or environments, for so many of us, there becomes this pressure to be more like everybody else around us. And sometimes we can see this in female leaders too, who might have been around a while and certainly developed their career at a time where they were surrounded by male leaders. And the masculine style of leadership was if you didn't adopt that, you couldn't get ahead. And we still see some of that now in our leadership, regardless of gender. So, of course, we all have masculine and feminine styles within us, regardless of gender. And of course, gender is well beyond male and female, too. But when we have this pressure to change something about ourselves to fit in, it flies in the face of the very thing that is our point of difference, the very thing that sets us apart. And then, of course, comes our strength. The reason we talk about diversity and celebrate it so much and aim for it in our leadership teams, in our communities, is because we all bring different skill sets. And when we celebrate what makes us different, then the whole is more than the sum of its parts. And yet, of course, if we're trying to change ourselves to fit in or be more like everybody else, or we feel like there's something wrong about the way we present because it's different to those around us, or we're having messages from society saying, this is different, this is not what I perceive a leader in this space to look like. And of course, we feel like changing ourselves to fit in. And yet, this is the very reason we stand out, make a difference, our uniqueness in what we bring to the table. So I'm a big believer in owning our shine. But I acknowledge this is a lot harder than it sounds, particularly in the society in which we live, which is why it's so important to look after ourselves. And this was a reoccurring theme that's come up in much of our corridor over this season of the podcast. The need to take care of ourselves, but never the time to do so. So I loved the corridor we had around macro and micro adjustments and macro and micro self-care plans. And I often refer to this as our plan A and our plan B. Your plan A is that all the bells and whistles in an ideal week. And I had one of those recently. It was a quiet week. And I got an ideal week where I got to do yoga in the mornings. I got to go for a surf. I got to do my work. I got to go to the gym. I was enough time to prepare healthy, nutritious meals. And I was like, yeah, this is the ideal week health wise. If I had every week like this, I would be on fire. And yet we know but that's not always the case. Then you have the plan B weeks where you're traveling here, there, and everywhere. You're up at 5 a.m. to catch flights, and you meet yourself coming back because you're in so many meetings. And yet, when we flip between the two, So we carve out the time for the macro, but we also make time for the micro when things get busy. So that might be, instead of an hour yoga class, I do 3 stretches in the morning before I get in the shower. As an example, I think when we make this doable, it's more likely to happen. And we know that it's so fundamental to happening as well. And the whole concept I often talk about, slowing down to speed up, is if we don't rest well, we cannot perform well. And I love to approach, and you'll have heard me talk about this before, I love to approach this concept of performance, or self care, if you like, from a performance perspective, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about, how do I perform at my best? What do I need to fill my tank to make sure my battery is fully charged? And sometimes when we talk about it as wellness and self care, and of course it's both, it loses some of the edge, particularly in the workplace. We feel less inclined to have a conversation with our leadership team about self care and resilience than we perhaps do about performance and productivity. We're talking about exactly the same thing. And I've always believed that for us as individuals, it's not that we don't know what to do in this space, it's that we don't have the time, or we don't make the time. Because there is this saying, of course, that if something's important, there's always the time for it. And I think when we start to change this from a, what do I need for my self care, to what do I need to perform well and be at my best and do everything that I need for everybody else, that carries more weight. It makes it easier for us to prioritize, because it's no longer something for us. Because we know, particularly as women, we know that we are quite often last on our own list. Everything else and everybody else comes first. So when we start changing that narrative, I feel like we get more of an opportunity and permission to prioritize this. And then, of course, more chances of it happening, because we need it, particularly in this current climate. And I reckon tapping back into what makes us human is our point of difference, particularly in the age of AI. We had we've had a bit of, I've put it all on the podcast around the future of work, and of course the evolution of AI, hybrid working, the rise in burnout, and of course the stuff that's going on in the globe when we look at the geopolitical situation and the wars across the world, climate change, cost of living. There's so many things happening at the moment, that tapping into what makes us human and actually getting back to being human beings rather than human doings, I think this will be our key point of difference as we move into the future. And I think probably something we need now more than ever. Because in a world that's moving faster than probably we've ever been built for, we've lost touch with what it means to be human. I reckon that we have become human doings over human beings. So we're chasing more, we're burning out at a bigger rate, and we're kind of disconnected from the stuff that truly matters. It's almost like we're living in a way that's out of sync with who we are, what our core. But I don't think that's our fault. I don't think we're broken. It's the system that we're trying to fit into that is. So you know that if you've listened to me speak anywhere on anything before, my mantra is always, more is not always better. And I think it's time for us to slow down and reconnect with ourselves, who we are and what makes us tick, reconnect with the things that are bigger than us, our purpose, with each other, in the present moment around us, so that we can cultivate this state of contentment and inner peace that happening in us regardless of what goes on around us, because we know that we don't always control those external circumstances, but we can control how we show up and who we be in the world. And of course, we need that more than ever as the world gets a little bit faster, a little bit crazier, and a little bit more uncertain. I believe that happy humans make a better world, and that's what I've become passionate about. But having said that, it's a tough ask, I think, this whole concept of returning to being a human being, because the world's changing faster than ever. I feel like we're standing right now at a crossroads of rapid technological advancement, shifting workplace dynamics, and a future that feels more uncertain each day. Of course, burnout is on the rise. The AI evolution continues at a quickening rate. We've got economic instability and global crises. We find ourselves in this space, I think, where I've noticed there's more of us searching for something more, something deeper, something that unites us in a world that often seems more divided than ever. We're living in systems at the moment that our bodies and minds were never really designed for. So we're chasing more, doing more, and sacrificing what truly matters in pursuit of this material success. And it's left us disconnected. I think we've mistaken busyness for purpose, external validation for meaning, and digital connectivity for real human connection. And in the rush to live faster, we've forgotten how to live well. So I think it's time for us to make this radical shift from doing to being. And this is something I've talked about ever since writing Burnout to Brilliance and is the subject of the brand new book, Harmony, too. I think we need to slow down so that we can create more space in our lives, in our minds, in our hearts for what truly matters. So this is not about retreating from the world, but about designing a way of living that honors who we are and what makes us whole. It's something that I've been calling, particularly with the book tour happening and the new book, Harmony, it's something I've been calling from chaos to harmony. Harmony is this quiet inner peace that comes from living in harmony with ourselves, communities, and the world around us. So when we choose to put the being back into human being, we reconnect with the essence of life. So this fast-paced, always-on world we know is taking a toll on our mental health, our relationships, and our ability to simply be human. We're more connected than ever, yet I reckon we've probably never felt more disconnected from ourselves and each other. We know there's a loneliness epidemic, and not just in our older people, but also in our younger population now, too. So it's not going to surprise you to know that I reject this myth that more is always better. Instead, I think we need to cultivate space for what truly nourishes us. We're human beings, and our worth is not determined by how much we can accomplish in a day. I'm a big believer in using ancient wisdom to solve modern problems. The answers we seek are not new, they're rooted in principles that have stood the test of time for a reason. When we look at ancient practices that honor the human spirit, we realize that science is now proving what they've always intuitively known, that things like connection, stillness, and simplicity are keys to a well-lived life. And of course, that connection we have with each other. We talk about kindness and compassion and how that features not just in leadership, but in healthy communities. And in a world where division and intolerance grows, I reckon we have an opportunity to choose empathy, to choose to see the humanity in one another and stand together. There's also this concept, though, of how we connect with ourselves as well as each other. And I think the relationship we have with ourselves is probably one of the most important and also the most overlooked. When we live in alignment to our values, our life becomes so much different. Even when we're busy, it feels to flow with so much ease, so much more ease. In every moment, we ask ourselves, what matters most? Is this task, this interaction, this pursuit in line with who I am and what I believe? And we begin to make choices that honor our true selves and our unique purpose, knowing that when we do, we create a ripple effect that touches every aspect of our lives and, of course, the world. So I think there's this awesome opportunity. And I think, now going from current state and looking at past as to the conversations that we've had over the course of this season of the podcast, looking now to the future, feel optimistic. The future begins with us. Yes, we've done a lot of hard work that gets us here. Yes, there's still a lot of challenge around us and change and uncertainty. But I think that the solution's not complicated. It's about simplifying, creating space, and living in alignment with what makes us whole. It's about living on a human scale, not living beyond human scale, as Brené Brown talks so beautifully about. And when we live on a human scale, it honors who we are, what we need, and the connections that make life meaningful. We have this opportunity to create space in our minds and our schedules for the things that matter, to choose harmony over chaos, connection over division, and purpose over busyness. This is not a passive state. It's a powerful state of being that allows us to thrive in an ever-changing world. And this is a call, I guess, to step into our full humanity and to live from a place of authenticity, connection, and contentment. And I think the flow-on effect, not just for our leadership and our whānau and our communities, but also for our worlds, for our productivity, performance, our state of being, therefore our wellness, it's all interconnected. So I reckon together we can build a better world, one where happy humans can create lasting change, one where we thrive, not just survive, and one where we come home to ourselves and each other. I have had a fabulous time chatting to so many wise and amazing people on the show. And I hope you've enjoyed it too. I hope you've had some takeaways, some gold nuggets. Go back and have a listen to any that you might have missed. We will be back in the new year, potentially with a new season for the podcast, potentially even with a new topic. We'll listen to your feedback. We let us know what you think, because that will help inform what we do next with the show. But it's been a fabulous opportunity to connect with you. I really appreciate, and I know that in a time poor world, when you press play and make time to listen to something, you are deciding to prioritize that time and to devote it to this. And I'm very grateful, because there are 1,000 other things you could have done with that same time. And so I hope it's been useful. It's been an absolute pleasure to bring this to you, and to be able to host this, and look forward to doing more of it in the new year. Ki te anō.